We had to close it down. We saved 2 million lives. We're opening it up. We have a V shape, and it's coming back. It's coming back very fast.
Vice President Joe Biden talking up a K-shaped disappointment.
He talks about a V-shaped recovery. It's a K-shaped recovery. If you're on the top, you're going to do very well. And the other thing and if you're at the bottom, or you're in the middle or the bottom, your income is coming down. You're not getting a raise.
18 days until Election Day and the fiscal negotiation merry-go-round still spinning on Capitol Hill. Secretary Mnuchin, Speaker Pelosi, telling her that he can lean on Leader McConnell to pass a deal as McConnell suggests both sides are discussing a proposal he can't sell in the Senate, saying, quote, we're in discussions with the Secretary of the Treasury and the Speaker about a higher amount. That's not what I'm going to put on the floor. It's a much larger amount than I can sell to my members. All of this leaving investors and market participants worldwide looking beyond November 3rd.
Markets, regardless of the outcome of the election, are expecting continued fiscal stimulus.
It's just a matter of when it's going to occur.
It's not a question of if, it's really a question of when.
Whether there's stimulus before or after the election.
Markets are looking ahead to that now, saying
we're not expecting to see much, if anything, out on stimulus.
In the short term, we're probably not going to get stimulus.
I think we will get more fiscal stimulus after the election.
Perhaps the middle of the first quarter of next year.
Markets are pricing, a reasonably high probability of a blue wave.
There's a good chance that we get a Democratic sweep.
It takes another big leap in fiscal spending next year.
A massive fiscal package sometime either in January or February.
That makes the next couple of months pretty precarious for the markets.
Let's bring in Kevin Cirilli, Bloomberg Chief, Washington correspondent down in D.C. Good morning to you, Kevin.
Good morning, Jonathan. Two main collision courses that we're following and tracking, especially this morning. The first on the fiscal stimulus front. You just saw those tweets from Drew Hamill, who is, of course, an advisor to Speaker Nancy Pelosi on the communications front, really delivering an optimistic message following the Speaker's meeting yesterday with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. I was struck by the tone of those comments, especially with the foreshadowing that President Trump really could step in here to put pressure on Senate Republicans who are apprehensive and nervous about spending so much money. Again, we should note there are several prominent Republicans in the Senate. Look at Senator Ted Cruz, for example, who are very wary of having to spend upwards of $1.8 trillion on the fiscal stimulus front. So the timetable is still very much unknown and the final price tag. But again, it is a question of when and not if. But then secondly, on the election front, last night, two dueling presidential town halls, not much learned in terms of policy as it relates to either side of the aisle. However, I'm looking at the data on the mail-in ballots. According to the Florida State University election tracking metrics, 19.8 million Americans have already sent in their ballots for mail-in voting. Democrats far outpacing the number of Republicans who have early voted. That typically is a sign that Democrat turnout is going to be up. Again, we've never had a pandemic of this sort to impact mail-in voting, but the early indicators suggest that Democrats are far outpacing Republicans in terms of mail-in ballots. So that's something that is very much potentially an early indicator of turnout that we'll be watching closely, Jonathan.
Kevin, two stories there, the fiscal stimulus effort and the election. And they're both connected. And as far as the negotiations are concerned, is this just political posturing? The story we've grappled with all morning, Brexit on the one hand just looks like posturing. Fiscal talks in D.C. just looks like posturing. Does Congress actually want to make a deal? And can Leader McConnell pass a deal in the vicinity of $2 trillion? I'm not sure that was true last week. It wasn't a month ago. Is it true today?
You know, I spoke with a Republican House member yesterday, and essentially I said, help me walk through the potential of a lame duck session, because the biggest unknown right now is who's going to have political leverage in the month of December, because we will likely know the outcome of the election. We'll also likely know the landscape in terms of the House and the Senate majorities. And so that is really who will have the upper hand in those lame duck negotiations. That's really what we don't know. And so both sides are making the calculation that they will have the upper hand, but obviously that's a wash. And so That's really the biggest variable right now, is will Speaker Pelosi have the same leverage that she has now come December when she's negotiating? And no one can price that in because no one knows.